The Automobile Association says it's pointless to change laws relating to drunk driving if the current laws regulating alcohol are implemented ineffectively. Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula is pushing for a 0% on the legal blood alcohol concentration for drivers. Now, the AA says a 0% limit is not the only solution to change behavior. South Africa's current blood alcohol concentration is 0.5%, which is on par with world standards. Now, joining us to expand on this a little further is the AA's Layton Beard. Layton, a very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. You're saying that the new drunk driving amendment misses the mark, and of course we listened to what Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula's proposal was when it comes to the new bill over the 0% alcohol consumption when driving. What are your thoughts around what you're saying that will not become effective, especially as we look at the current policy in place and how you would characterize it?
Yeah, good morning, Mpho. Thanks for that. Look, I think the first thing that we need to acknowledge is that we don't particularly know what the extent of the problem of drunk driving in South Africa is. There are no reliable statistics. There was a report that was commissioned by the RTMC. It relied on two reports. One of those reports said that 58% of drivers are drunk and cause fatal accidents. The other report said 7.8%. The RTMC's own official statistics annually don't give a breakdown of exactly how many drunk drivers are involved in fatal crashes. So one of the things that we suggest happens first is that we need to understand the extent of the problem, and that requires scientific data-driven analysis and research, and we need proper numbers to determine that. When you come to the legislation, our feeling is that you can't change legislation and hope that by changing that legislation you're going to change human behavior. Human behavior will change when enforcement is effective. Human behavior will change when we see that there are consequences to actions such as drunk driving. So when drunk drivers are caught and they are prosecuted and the courts are harsh on offenders, we will see drunk driving behavior changing. To legislate against that, we don't think is going to make a difference. Our further question is that if you change the law, how are you going to change enforcement of that law to ensure that you are achieving the goals that you set out? If enforcement stays the same, then you can change the law in any way you want. It's not going to make any difference.
And how do you think now drinking and driving can be more effectively combated?
Well, I think I've mentioned one, and that is obviously, dealing more effectively with offenders. We need proper law enforcement, and by proper law enforcement, I mean we need more traffic law enforcement officers on the road, and that is something that the Traffic Review Committee found in 2018. They said we simply need more traffic officers on the road, and that's something that the AA supports, and we think that that is necessary. They need proper equipment and working equipment at all times. They need samples of blood that has been taken on the scene to be processed quickly. We need the courts to deal harshly with offenders. This is the cycle that is going to deal effectively with behavior that is counter to what society is demanding. And then obviously, and the minister touched on this, and I don't want to be glib about this at all, but there is a huge need for intensive education on the issue of road safety overall in South Africa. We talk about drunk driving and the fact that the limit is going to be reduced to 0, but we need education from a young age of children in South Africa right through to people who are driving already, to educate them on road safety, not just on specific issues, but on road safety generally. And that is critical. So we need education, 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 and we need to deal more effectively with offenders.
So are you saying that, while you stand by the support of the wide-ranging proposals, the issue of drunk driving is much more intricate than that of drunk driving, and that pedestrian safety is also an empirical factor that needs to be brought in under the spotlight and also examined? But as you speak to those points, Layton, you speak about behavioral change being a huge factor in driving all sorts of changes. How then does government begin to infiltrate that message and ensure that passengers and drivers are both aware on the road? What sort of messaging is needed first to change the behavior before focusing on one aspect, which is drunk driving?
So first of all, I completely agree with your sentiments early on. When you speak about pedestrian safety, 40% of all fatalities on our roads annually are pedestrians. And there is a huge need for a more positive approach in dealing with pedestrian safety. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but we have to come back to education, education, education. So that is super important. In terms of dealing with behaviors that are a problem in terms of the laws, such as drunk driving, I cannot stress enough. You can change the law and say that there is a zero limit that we have on blood alcohol concentration. But if behavior doesn't change, people are still going to go to a bar and they're still going to have 8 or 9 drinks and they're still going to drive drunk, whether it's a 0.05 or 0.00 limit. Our approach is that you need more effective, more intensive and proper law enforcement that deals with offenders, and offenders need to be harshly treated. They need to be treated by the courts as harshly as possible within the law. And they need to be seen to be treated harshly by the public of South Africa. And that is going to change behavior. We believe that will be a good starting point to change the behavior of people who continue to drink and drive.
Now, what do you make of some of the wide-ranging proposals by the Traffic Law Enforcement Review Committee? Have those been put into effect, or are you seeing the impact of some of those laws?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't. I think we are still seeing that law enforcement is vastly under-resourced, and that's something that we would certainly like to see improve. We are of the opinion that if you are really, invested in improving road safety, it's not something that you do over a specific time of the year. It's something that you do year-round. So our opinion is that you need to make sure that the law enforcement capability in the country is adequately equipped to do their job. And that means that they have all the resources that they need, not only human resources, but financial and equipment resources. And that's something that we would like to see. You can change the law, but that doesn't mean that people's behavior is going to change. You're going to change people's behavior by effectively policing the existing law that you have. The other concern, obviously, Mpho, that we haven't even touched on is, what do you do with people who are using medications and have a blood alcohol content that is higher than 0? How do you deal with these people? They will effectively have criminal records if they're now caught, and the law, we don't believe, addresses that. So our proposal is to have a limit of 0.02. It's something that is in place in countries like Sweden and Norway, and very effective. But again, it all comes down to this issue of how effectively are you going to police the existing law. If you don't police the existing law, what is going to change when you change the law?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Let's leave it there for now. The Automobile Association's Layton Beard saying that changing one aspect of the law requires behavioral change first, as there are many facets that deal with enforcing the laws relating to drunk driving.